All righty. Well, good morning and a big hey now. It is July 30th, HEX Day 2432. Going to do some HEX Bond analysis. Going to look at the HEX Bond Desk. And so, yeah, good morning. Good morning, Top Gun. See you there. So I know, hey, listen, learning and creating new habits is all about repetition. Today's market continues to reinforce the same theme we've been talking about the past several weeks. HEX is leading the market on Polstream right now, anyways. While the bond market quietly just keeps building, a little bit of a time. Price appreciation has continued with HEX. It's going up. Price appreciation of HTTs going up. The HEX Time Token priced in HEX. Liquidity continues to deepen on the bond market. Infrastructure continues to improve, and participation is spreading across more of the maturities. All right, so yeah, we're moving in the right direction overall. Just one comment about the why behind all this. The belief is that a vibrant bond-like market for HEX will incentivize more people coming into HEX. And then the breakdown beyond that is there's a little bit of something for everybody. There are options for HEX stakers, hexagons, to get more T-shares, to get more HEX. There's options for traders to trade the curve. There are options for arbors to arb. And so, yeah. And then, of course, providers to provide. And all of them have their own pros and cons. No guarantee anything actually happens. I mean, some of the stuff, even when we're looking at the front end with the liquidity there, it is just an offer. Someone, maybe somebody takes up the offer, maybe they don't. And we'll see over time how that works out. And what I mean by offer is somebody creates inventory, puts it on the market and says, listen, if you would like to do something with liquidity, here it is. And you can decide if you want to or you don't. And very limited risk in terms of HEX, because when you have pairs like a HEX pair, my dog's going to bark while I'm doing this, right? A HEX HTT pair, you have this option to be able to put the pair up, and they just grind against each other, and they are HEX versus HEX, so the prices stay similar. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry for the delay. My little dogs, they get all excited about HEX pumping. All right, so it's an optional market, so let's move on. Let's go take a look at the HEX chart, see how that's going. It's been looking pretty good. The one thing I would mention to people is to be kind of careful with looking at numbers purely as they show on the screen sometimes. Because not all the numbers are always right, and you need to really consider the context of everything. So just looking at HEX, it did come up, of course, above the 111-day moving average. It had a little bit of pullback, but it's fighting pretty good on that 21 level, 0021. So that continues to do its thing. Look, this is the golden ratio multiplier chart, so we can see the buy signals that come in way early, and now, of course, this what we believe is the bottom, and then a sharp increase with this wick way above the 350-day moving average. And of course, price came down from that because that was only a wick. It just goes to show, though, just how volatile the market can be. I mean, you can see the wicks up and down here. TA guys are going to have a field day with all this. Looking on Deck Screener, again, I would caution not to react to the color green and the color red when you see things up here, because these numbers are rolling 24 hours. And sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, the pump is gone. It's 2.5%. Yeah, well, look at the number. It's 2132. And, the pump's not gone, right? We can see it on the chart. So you have to look a little bit further than just the colors, but you can see the strength of HEX continuing to rise. Now, I will say this, and again, the TA guys will comment on this, and maybe we'll get some feedback. We had these pumps, right? The 200K, the 150K, 226K, 337K. But the increases over the period of time is based on the net volume, and I'm not looking at all pairs. I'm just looking at this particular pair. So there's more net volume, but on this pair, I mean, it was a $4,000 net volume that has increased the price 2.54%. Just to give you an idea just how fragile and volatile the market could be. Now, so what do I think is going on here? We're looking for follow-on, volume based on this. And that's what we'll be looking at over the days, and we'll see what happens, right? I mean, you can see this could be just considered to be another big test. This is kind of like textbook, go drop it in one of the AIs and ask about market making. We had the Conrad dump, price went down, price went up through the market maker coming in and doing whatever they're doing. Then this was a test. Are you guys ready for it to go up? And so we made a higher low, tested it again, a higher low, tested it again, a higher low, tested it again. Now, what happens from here? I don't know. Dips are in the game, volatility is in the game, 50% dips are in the game, right? So, it would not be surprising to wake up and see some sort of a dip that brings us down 40, 50%, maybe even down to this yellow line. I'm not saying I want that to happen. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying that everything we look at is always lagging. It's always lagging, right? And so we just don't know until we see what the market does with this, right? So prices has been trending. Let's go on a different time frame here. Switching to the 4-hour if it updates here. Come on. There we go. Hour looks better. You can see we've been trending, in this kind of a wedge. I don't know if these are active sales or V3 that's holding it at this level, but obviously it looks like 21.20 is becoming a level of resistance and possibly maybe flip to support. If we tried to match it up, you can see, let's see, where did it touch the most? So I guess you could argue from a level perspective, we came up through 21 and went up to whatever the high was at 22-ish. And then it was unable to support that. Came down, again, this is hourly. Came down, tested it again, came down, almost tested it again. So it was two tests going up, tested it a third time in the last few hours, and now we're above. And you can see from this little tail at the bottom, at the back here, that we've got a kind of an indecisive candle, but it looks like it could hold the support. So that's what we're waiting to see. But we need to zoom out, and if we zoom out, it looks, the picture looks way different, right? We're going up on the weekly, so that's all good. All right. So yeah, so most importantly, above the 111-day moving average, price continues to make higher highs and higher lows. Right? Even though the price hasn't closed yet, above the 350, we can see that it's possible. Next obvious support probably around 0026. And as always, HEX is central to what I talk about with HEX Bond Desk, because everything in the Actuator ecosystem begins there, right, with HEX. HTT represents a future HEX, a future unit of HEX delivered on a known redemption date. It's right in the name of the HTT, right, the symbol. The redemption day is embedded directly in that symbol. You can see it, HTT 3000, 3000. And then it's backed one-to-one with HEX, while the market price is only the time value of HEX. So when HEX strengthens, the entire curve receives stronger collateral, right? Because the HEX price has gone up. All right, let's go take a look at the front end of our dashboard here. Just taking a look at the front end. And also keep in mind the numbers and things that I show, they're changing every minute, right? So there's trades going on. So some of this can look a little static at this point. One of the biggest observations over the last 24 hours is that, there's more liquidity has come in, liquidity has grown. Current liquidity is spreading against the different maturities. Again, these are offers of inventory for people who want to utilize liquidity, and the providers are providing liquidity as a service. The 2460 looks like it's pretty close to, let's see, 2460, pretty close to 5K, right? Yeah, just about 5K. And that's bouncing around. 2490, just under 3K. And that can change in a moment with the HEX price. 2520, right around $2,300 in liquidity. So yeah, they're fairly small. But think 100X. What does it look like to you when it's $23,000 in liquidity? All three of those pools, as I mentioned yesterday, now will qualify for LPX solo pools, and there's been a lot of LPX action. Now, nearly every HTT in this list now has been activated, right? So it's moving around. We're seeing trades on the 24-hour basis, and it's important for the market. So that gives us active pricing, visible liquidity, tradable markets, and observable discounts. So at some point, somebody's going to discover an AI. Maybe it's going to be feeders AI. I don't know. And they're going to start applying it here. Now, granted, you'd say, well, yeah, but Crispy, who really is looking at this stuff, right? Who's going to look at a 2520, a 2550? Who's going to look at one with $300 with liquidity? Well, they're already doing it. So if you go dig into any of these, you can see that the bots are feeding, right? So they're going back and forth between the pairs and updating as they go and getting their value, because yeah, they're interested in 300 pulse, right? You and I might not be interested in trying to earn 300 pulse, but the R bots are the ones that actually want to earn, right? So that goes on, and that's just a precursor for when real life people value, similar trades, because they're much higher dollar values. I didn't go look to see what all this adds up to, but it's probably quite a bit. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be at some point. This is $1 million market on this front end, right? With liquidity, because if HEX goes up enough, and now we really can dispatch with people telling us that HEX will never go up. It went up, right? The rest of the story remains to be told, but it can go up. It can go up quickly. You can only get 1/3 of the HEX that you could a month ago for the same value. And so, yeah, that's what we're seeing. All right, let's go look at the Actuator dashboard. 3000s continue to be the benchmark overall. Price action has been relatively flat. With the HTTs, you're not going to see action on them unless people are trading them for some reason. So it's pretty normal for them to be pretty slow in terms of volume. And but what the importance is over time, as the value goes up in the pools, you'll see more efficient pricing is there, right? So the more ARBs will be able to go through. Yeah, and that's how that's going. On the long end, which is I have up on the screen now, you've got several that are paying very high fixed returns. You got the 7777s, 7900s, even the 6666s. So let's go ahead and put these in order by total return. And I think part of the part of the issue here when people are looking at all this information that we're talking about is that there's different strategies. There's different things that people want to do. There might be someone who just wants to come in and have exposure to HEX, and they're willing to go in with a small amount and maybe into Quattro sevens or the 7000s and wait the time and earn the 124, 126% right now, 164% on the 777s. I don't have the 666s up, but that's 159%. So there could be someone who would come into this and be like, well, I like access to HEX and I like to have exposure to it. But you know what? I'm just gonna put a little bit in all of these. Right. And they might just swap into each one of them because they are all discounted in terms of HEX and just build a ladder that way and have exposure. Is that the optimum strategy? Maybe, but maybe for them it is, maybe not for us. If you're a provider, you're a staker, but people can do that. And so they can do that and have that access. Now other people will say, well, wait a minute, you're taking away demand from HEX. Well, not really, because in order for any of this inventory to be available, somebody had to stake. Right. So with an 8,000 for there to be inventory for someone to buy off the market, somebody had to stake Quattro Cinco, to get out here. And so this represents all of these options as far as time and monetizing them. We have that going on. All right. Now, if we go look again, we'll go back over to our top line here and see what else is going on. The 6,000s remain pretty strong with a 7.4% fixed APR. Their website identifies that as best for selling. So we've got the 777s, best for long-term buying to hold, 6,000s, best for selling and amplification. But do your own analysis of that to make sure that you're getting the results you want to get. And the amplification refers to staking out to HTT 6000, which is day 6000, minting the 6000, swapping them for HEX, and then getting more T-shares. Some people are willing to take whatever the conditions they think are correct for that. And so we do see amplification on a regular basis when we have mispriced HTTs. And then the best APR is the 3000, best for buying, right? And now why is that? 3000s are ending. So let's do this. We'll do fixed APR on the screen. So we have the 3000s. There's a 48 million total supply. Liquidity's come up quite a bit with the price of HEX, but the fixed APR is 23% over about a year and a half. Total return 36% against 74K in liquidity. And so that's why that one pops to the top. All right, let's go take a look at what's been minting. All right, so minting, we'll do a quick update on this, see if we had anything new come through. Again, you have to go check all the numbers and whatnot. I'm getting third-party information from the RPC, third party in that I'm getting it, so it's kind of like third party in that way. Yeah, see how that changes in the window as we go. So we've had quite a few HTTs minted in the last 24 hours. Just prior to this last hour, so it was showing about 1.4 million. This is a rolling number, but you can see the most recent activity has been on 4,000s, a little bit on 5,000, somebody doing 2520, 2970 from the front end. And you have the long end. See that going on with the minting. And of course, why is that important? Because the minting pays 1% to the vaults. And so we see that activity, just prior to me doing this update, which I'd updated about an hour ago, I guess. The HTT 7000 was being pretty strongly minted with another 1.5 million. So what does this suggest? This suggests that people are beginning to allocate where they want to allocate And we do see an awful lot of concentration normally on the far end of the yield curve. But they're totally different use cases. The people, the common question I always ask is, why do people even roll stakes, in general? And there's some reasons for what they do, but they can do that with Actuator as well. And they could do 30, 60, 90-day rollers, as well as provide liquidity as a service during those periods of time. And what we're seeing right now is both ends of the curve are being strengthened. Right? Actuator token protocol. Let's see here. Let's go look at this Actuator Vaults. So the vaults have been pretty interesting. We did see around 20 million removed from HTT 7000 over the last few days. And then we began to see it get spread. You can see the lower or the front end down here that some of these numbers have been increasing, with the amount of actuator that's tied up in here. Every time somebody does do a deposit like that, it does get tied up for 90 days. Otherwise, it's penalized when it's removed. Overall, we're down a little bit in how many actuator is actually in the vault, because we had the 20 million come out. But we would have been approaching about 300 million. We're at 279 million right now. The 8,000 slowly have increased. Not a lot of fanfare yet on that, but the reason for that is the presumption that HTT 8,000s will be minted. So once we see more positive minting on the 8,000s, you may see these numbers surge. I don't know what the number will be, but I mean, I wouldn't expect it to stay at 24 million. I would expect it to be up. Certainly between 36 million and 108 million. So we'll see some rotation of all this. And we've had some positive experiences and reports from people about the amount of HTTs they've been able to earn. So we've been seeing solid participation in the vaults, and some of the front end maturities, as I just showed you, they started to get loaded up. So meanwhile, the 7,000 is the largest. And I think what's important about that is that there is capital that's moving around, but it's not leaving, right? So people are reallocating towards opportunities across the curve. A couple different strategies I've heard people talk about. One is like with the expectation that as we go into the future, more of these 7,000s will be minted. So therefore it makes sense to keep Actuator in there. The idea that more of the 8,000s will be minted, therefore there's a little bit of focus on that. You have the incentivized HTTs, which are all of these top ones, the 4, 8, 3, 5, 6, and 7. 8 will be incentivized in October. So when that comes down and we end up in that situation, there will be people that will want to enter into the farms. One of the way they can get the HTTs to put into LP is by minting them. And so these remain attractive options for people to be able to add their actuator tokens. All right. Meanwhile, I did cover it yesterday, but I think it's worth it again just to mention it. Meanwhile, on the old actuator here, you do have the ability, they made some changes to the UI. You can come in here and change what you want to show as far as HTTs. And for instance, you could even focus on the front end. And this could be quite popular a little bit later, but it'll then analyze the same data and tell you what the best total return is for the range, which is the 3,000s, what the best premium is, which is the 2580. Though again, what I'd say is watch the liquidity, right? Because you know that some of these could be small liquidity. And then the best APR is the 3,000s. It doesn't mean you can't make a move on it. Let's look at 2580. Let's see what that comes up at right now. So 2580, where are we? So 2580 is a safe swap, is about $8. What does safe swap mean? 2% of the pool. It's only a $386 pool, right? And so, yeah, some of these things need to be tested in terms of whether you can efficiently even do a trade. But in general, a 2% of a single pool is pretty reasonable in terms of not moving the price too much. But you have to pick and choose that when you're using the aggregator. Look for the price, the price impact that's coming in, right? But we have, and there's, it's likely that these in the middle here that have the lower liquidity, unless somebody adds more liquidity into them, they'll not be activated strongly. They won't get as much in volume. But hey, who knows? We'd be surprised about what happens with this. But again, we can see that the prices in HEX are kind of like normalizing, to some level. It's very close, at 2460, if we were going to be looking at its expected price, it should be really close to 1-to-1, unless somebody makes a move on it, right? And why would it be 1-to-1? Because in 27 days, a 2460 is HEX. So why would somebody sell it for less? Right. So that's why the prices will tend to normalize around the 1-to-1. All right. So we took a look at the 3000s. Let's take a look at the farms, see what they look like. Okay, so these numbers have been bouncing around a little bit. The liquidity's come up pretty nicely. I mean, there's been additions to liquidity in terms of depth, but a lot of this growth has to do with the price of HEX has gone up, right? And so the price of HEX goes up, the price of the HTTs go up, the pairs go up. But looks like best performing is tied. HTT 5000, HTT 6000, both at 23.7%, followed by the 4000s 23.6%, and the 7000s at 19.6%. And then rounding out 15.7% for HTT 3000 in HEX. Right, so we have that. So we continue to see this going on. And remember, the HTT 8000 farms are on the roadmap. Actually, they're beyond on that roadmap. They're actually embedded into the contract. So the 8000s will be going up and be incentivized in October, and the 3000s will be pulled down. Right. So that'll be interesting to watch, because I don't know what's going to happen with this, with this liquidity that's out there, what people will choose to do. Now, there's an argument for just leaving the liquidity up and keep going with it, but that's a lot of value. And if your capital, you want to be more capital efficient, it might make sense to come out of that. We may see a drop in all of the HTTs on the front end if people want to get out of their 3000s and just migrate. But you know what? These guys here that own the 68K, 67K, they might leave some of it in. But perhaps they'll look at the front end here and distribute across. That's an option I hadn't really thought about. So people coming out of the 3000s, they'll have the ability to come in and possibly put their liquidity here if they want. Maybe even match it up 3000 to one of the front end HTTs. But every time somebody does a connection like that, just strengthens the entire ecosystem. All supporting the idea of HEX and staking HEX and building the HEX ecosystem. Right now on the Actuator tokens themselves, I'm showing that we hit about 800 million that now have been distributed. So there's 200 million left between now and October 27. For those who are interested, there are about 700 people, a bit over 700 people holding Actuator in the system. Might be more if they have all of it vaulted. It's still pretty early, and so we are seeing a growing hold account, right? And people have been pretty sticky about it. They haven't, I've come across some requests for OTCs and that type of stuff, but the thing about it is there's only about 20 million Actuator on the market, even though 800 million have been released. There's only about 20 million you could theoretically try to get some of, but you can't get all of it. As if somebody tried to come in and buy 10 million of it, it just sends the price crazy, right? And so it's a 1 billion supply. And so at the end of the day, you know, 100 million is a Poseidon, 10 million is a whale. Shark is just 1 million. And we've seen the shark price go. Let's see, what are we looking at now? 1 million. It says about 423. I think we topped out somewhere around 600 with, recently with this run up that took place back in May. It was around $600. So it's reasonable. It's still reasonable to get 1 million of them if you're willing to spend, the funds to do it. But you will take some slippage when you do that. That's why so many people go into the farms, because it's a good way to earn. But there will only be 200 million distributed, right? So you have to have a fairly significant amount of liquidity in there. Though I suppose if you wanted 10%, you could put 10% of the LP up, but now with the prices going up, makes that a little hard, right? Because now you're talking about 50%. 25, say it's 25% of the liquidity to 50% of the liquidity, maybe on a particular incentivized HTT to earn the million. And of course, those numbers all change. And then my favorite is the dolphin. A dolphin is 100,000. Right, 100,000. So that's just about $42 for a dolphin position with Actuator. And because we were talking about the vaults, let's go look at the vaults, right? Because we're talking about the vaults. So again, the Actuator token has a dual utility. On the one hand, it's a reward token, and people do sell it out. Right, we see prices go down just like everything else. But on the other hand, it's a revenue token. And the revenue is that if you deposit into a vault that you think is going to mint, you earn part of the mint, which is the HTT, which is future HEX. And that's how that works. And that's why I'm guessing, I don't know why everybody does what they do, but that's why I think when we're looking at this, these actuator balances here, we see people coming in and doing a spread, because one of the strategies is, hey, yeah, sure, I know a couple of them that I think are going to be minted, but I don't know somebody's going to come in and decide to mint a whole bunch of one of them. I mean, I'm guessing the 8,000s for sure, right? In my mind, that's a for sure guess. that's for sure that gets, right? So I know that people will do that, but I don't know if they're going to do 6,000. I don't know if they're going to do 4,000. I don't know, right? I don't know if somebody likes 6666. So the other strategy I've seen people use is they'll just do a spread. And so virtually, at least until the redemption day, if you have Actuator in the vaults, anybody ever mints, you get a piece of that mint. So that's a little bit of a game within a game, for sure, that with the Actuator tokens themselves. And so yeah, so the market's been pretty good. Let's go over to deck screen and see what's happening. Yeah, see, we're getting a little pumpy. Maybe let's see on the daily. Yeah, so here we are, as we've been talking. HEX has gone up a little bit more in the last hour, another 0.5% on that. So this looks like it's continuing, though we would look for additional volume to come in. All right, so things that we're really seeing is, with Actuator, opportunities continue to be available on the HTTs, particularly for those who might be interested in just for fun, looking at the curve trading opportunities that are out there. We'll look at a time travel here in a minute. So yeah, the whole thing's been building out. The founding team has been responsive. They're making changes to the UI. So I definitely recommend people submit those. You can do that on X. If you have a request, they have Actuator.Finance out there, or Actuator at Actuator.Finance. Links are in the show notes here. And we're beginning to see this all come together. Let's go take a look at that real quick. Let's see what the time trades look like. I'll put this list in hex order. I'm looking at the lower curve first. So you have a number of these that are now trading very closely to one-to-one with HEX. Looks like all the way through the 2700s. Some of the ones above 2,700, 1-to-1 with HEX. 2,730, a little bit below. All right, so one of the theories one of the guys was talking about is, there are different ways to look at this. So there isn't one strategy, but what they were talking about is setting larger positions on the like say 2460 or 2490 and earning their rewards while staying virtually liquid, right? Because 30 or 60 days isn't that far out, less time that you're locked. But then their plan would be to skim what they're earning off of their stakes and then throwing them out Quattro Cinco or to some other number like the 3000s. So we've seen a little bit of strategy like that. So when people are looking at this, I mean, essentially what somebody can come in and do with a large enough liquidity, and even if it isn't large, if you're, the way it works is if you minted HTT 2460s, that's future HEX, and then you put them on the market by selling them. And when you sell them, you get a certain amount of HEX back or whatever else you traded for, and you have access to that liquidity. But you can come back and pay those back. So if nobody else comes back, you're out whatever the price impact is, but you can actually go do your thing. I mean, there are people who do this. I think they're going to, they have a plan to make a 2x or a 3x in the next 3 days. Well, this is a way they can have access to some of that liquidity. And again, once liquidity grows to humongous levels, if this is a 500K pool, the options are pretty tremendous, right? So anyways, that's looking at the front end. Let's put it in the other direction. Look at the other direction. We got a little bit of time travel stuff that's possible. Let's see. 0.73. This is probably the wrong order. Make that do that. Let's go over here. We'll look at this a little more concise, a little bit easier to read for me anyways. I'll make it bigger and see. So we still have time preference trading, time walking, as Johnny Cass says, 48.48 on the 8,000s. You can go into an 8,000, go down to a 7,900, a 77.7. You can go into a 7,000, a 6,666. So you can stake Quattro Cinco, lock up HEX for very long periods of time. Continue to earn on a Quattro Cinco. So you have all the benefits of a Quattro Cinco, but actually swap into a lower HTT to take advantage of the discount. What would be the biggest one here would probably be the least impact slippage wise or price impact would be minting 8,000s and going into 7,000s, right? Because you get more units. But you just get the HEX, that HEX 1,000 days earlier. Pretty crazy. Once people, I think for the people I'm seeing coming into the chats and into the YouTube and all the rest, there's a moment when they get it, and they go, aha, right? They get the aha moment. And they're like, holy crap, you mean I can stake Quattro Cinco, earn all my rewards, and get more exposure to HEX in the meantime? Yes, all that's true. That is all made possible by the provisioners, the LP providers, minting the HTTs in the first place. They put the collateral up. And so they stake HEX in the first place. So it makes all this possible when they put it in the market and they make a market, So that's a time travel trade that's available. Of course, you can go in the other direction. One of Johnny's favorite activities was to get 73%. At the time, it was a lot higher, but 73% of their HEX back immediately. So they're staked out to HTT 3000, which is day 3000, but then also be able to get access to a bunch of that liquidity and throw it out further down the line, right? And so, you essentially can get an increase in the number of units by swapping into the 8,000s if you thought they were cheap enough, which they don't appear to be cheap. But the 7,900s, the 77.7s, and again, the 7,000s appear to be cheap. So you have that. And then one final comment, and then we'll go to the chat and look at what's going on in the chat. I did have a question come in. I know a lot of people are new to this, and they're coming in and they're reading the documents, watching a lot of this stuff. And I know that I've covered it, but it's worth saying it again. So this one question came in yesterday, and somebody said, hey, if, for instance, if I was to go swap into the HTT 3000, you're saying that I can get one-to-one hex, but isn't that going to be a problem because everybody's going to sell? And the simple answer is this. If you swap into an HTT 3000, so in other words, you didn't make a stake, you have HTT 3000s in your wallet. We can see that it's at a discount right now, 0.73. Yes, if you swap into this pair, you swap out of HTT 3000, you are going to lose a little bit more value, right? And you're not going to get one-to-one hex, right? So but that's not the only path, right? The other path is on day 3000, you redeem your HTTs. Remember, you bought them off the market, right? You can just redeem them, and the contract has the collateral to give you one-to-one hex. Right. So I hope that makes sense. The distinction there. If you have an HTT, you need to evaluate all your options when you get to the end, and to whatever you're doing. But if you're waiting all the way to day 3000, you're not going to swap them if you're not going to get more hex. Right. You would just turn them in. And that's another thing that's going to be quite interesting about this. Remember, I just mentioned that I don't know what's going to happen with this liquidity with HTT 3000s. Well, if people pull down their liquidity, what are they doing with their 3000s? Maybe they put them somewhere else. What if they sell them on the market? Okay. Some people immediately might be frightened by that. But so let's say they sell them on the market and they drive the 3000s down even further. It's like half a hex. Don't you think there'd be somebody, even now, we don't see it, but I guess the market's telling us that they're willing to wait right at the moment. But the HTT 3000s, if they go to half a hex, it's only a year and a half. You can turn them into the contract. Okay, so let's say everybody ignores what we're doing here, and nobody buys them, right? Just nobody buys them. They don't value it. The day before day 3000, so on day 2,999, and they're at this discount, I would take a swing at that. Why wouldn't I go buy, even if I'm doing $100, why wouldn't I go buy $100 worth and get a 25%, 27% return on investment overnight? I would. All right. So we just haven't gotten there yet to see that happen. Right. But we will get there with this front end, right? Because the 2460 is 27 days or something away. So we'll be able to see it in practice. Perhaps we'll see it. I don't know. Might not be a big enough liquidity or demand yet, but if it doesn't happen there and this liquidity begins to roll up the chain, we'll see it on other ones sooner. Anyways, I hope that made sense, that little bit. You have two options after you swap for the HTT and you have it. You could either swap it and take whatever price you're going to take, or you can redeem on the redemption day, which is the whole point. That's the whole point. It's different than, it's definitely different than what we end up seeing with most things. Most things are not backed one-to-one with something that you can turn in at the end. Most of them are not. Let's go back over here to our featured HTTs. There we go. So let's go see the chat. I saw a few people come in. I haven't been looking while we've been talking. I said hello to Top Gun earlier. I don't know if the hex pump is because of Actuator, but we did show yesterday. I have to do some analysis on it, get around to it, that a lot of the t-shirts being created out Quattro Cinco are coming through Actuator. Tam, good to see you. I see click buttons. Ruth's back. Good, Ruth. Good to see you. Efficient Hex. I know. I know I got to do something about my outro. Crispy waited so long to change the outro that now the broken clock is ready. You're funny. I got to, you know what? Somebody did that for me. I didn't make that myself, and I gave him the script that I wanted, and it just turned out to be a little fun thing. But now we should be able to do that. We should be able to do it. I should be able to go create some new ones. Have my maybe I'll just convert the whole channel into T and Nugget, and that's all we'll do. That'd be kind of funny, actually. Hey, Crispy Matthias, thanks for all the information you've provided. You're welcome. I'm trying. I keep thinking I'm talking too much, so I appreciate if people actually want to see it. Just having a question I've been waiting to ask. When you are talking about amplification, you talk about the HTT 6000 now. That is the best, but why? 3000 is always closest to one-to-one hex. Yeah, it depends on your perspective, right? And what you're trying to accomplish. So there is the, and I kind of glazed over it a few minutes ago, but if you're just looking to lock up more hex because hex becomes more scarce, then thick liquidity with a high price is good because you'll lock up more hex, right? Because you get more hex back. And you can go out longer in the chain. And that was kind of the example that Johnny had done. But that's not measuring APRs per se, right? And so I've done a couple of streams where we actually measure the APRs and the ROIs. I should say ROIs. So the other amplification approach is to mint something that looks expensive on the market, like the 6000s. And it's a matter of perspective and it's subjective, right? So you mint the 6000, swap them to hex, and then you stake the hex and make more 6000s, another 6000 stake, and that amplifies the number of T shares. And with a high enough payout, what you end up with is more yield and value than if you just did one stake, and that's the amplification process. So that's what comes up there. And then just as a follow-up again on the 3000s, the 3000s would normally be expected, and anything below 3000, it'd be closer to $1. Oh, it's dollar, $1 to $1. Hey, listen, all HTTs to $1. There we go. But closer to 1 to 1 with hex. That would be the expectation because there's less time until they're going to be redeemed. So hopefully I answered your question. All right. Yep, Pocalypse. Yeah, it's already crazy that you can't get the old hex like we could just a few weeks ago. Let's go look at that real quick. Let's see. Let me pull this up on the screen and share it out to you guys. Waiting for the potatoes. Come on, potatoes. There we go. Oh, let's go. We're going to do a die. You say hex. You know, at the bottom, this was giving me 1.3 million when I would do that. Now we're at 460,000. So yeah. If people aren't moving on hex now, when are they going to move on it, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to wait until you can only get 200,000, 400,000. I don't know. But even so, and again, you can kind of like see, all the aggregators do things different. Pitties is pretty good. But just looking at it's the number of pools, right? If I need to go from die into hex, I'm going to go, I'm going to go like 43% from pulse to hex. And it looks now like 23%. It's going through V3 for pulse hex, and then another 30% with USDC. So we've got these different paths. Of course, these change all day long, but what I think it's indicating is there's less and less hex available on the market, and so yeah, it's getting harder and harder to get this token. And then of course, when the price goes up, then we're going to really see some issues. Efficient Hex say, if you mint 6,000s, swap for 3,000, wait till redemption. and the native stake to 6,000, you have more hex than if you held 6,000. That's why amplification is best, even though it is a lower time frame. Okay. Yep. See, that's a whole, see, S-load, that's a whole nother swing on this, right? Because when I'm talking about the classic amplification, because I'm interested in the T-shares on the long end. But what you're pointing out is if somebody actually sits down and does the math, if you mint 6,000, swap for 3,000, you get more hex if with that plus the stake that you had created, right? So, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. And I know, one of the things that have come back to us has been, that question over and over again. Over and over again. Oh, yeah. Hey, Sunlight Live. HEX getting some shine today. I saw that. There's two things that we should point out before I close. One, let's go over to the chart, and we see a 12% increase on the HEX here. So put it on the, geez, I should probably pay. I don't know what to pay. All right, so we put it here. We can see the overall chart for the HEX. It had broken that 111. It was lagging a little bit behind, but that's a nice little increase, right? The shape of it looks very similar. No, very similar. So HEX getting some love. Don't know in which direction that's coming from and why. Probably a combination of HEX, but we do see that both ETH and Bitcoin are up a little bit today as well. So there's something there. And then, guys, listen, there are people that like both HEX and HEX, and rotations in the game too. PHEX goes up enough, makes sense to swap it at HEX, get more units. If you're playing that game, let's look at Ethereum. Let's see where it's kind of approaching. Yeah, look at this level. This is pretty awesome. So I don't make the crypto rules and why things are the way they are, but you can see that it's playing with the 111-day moving average. It did test it once. Ethereum did, and it will test it again probably here in the coming days. And what I think a flipping of the 111-day moving average as support will be a huge move for Ethereum if and when that is to happen. I think it's when, not if, because typically what we end up with is so we go back to the last cycle, right? Once it flips above, usually like we saw this back in 22, it stays above quite a bit of time, right? So no guarantee of that, right, on the upwards angle, but stayed above like from January of 23 all the way to July of 23. So good 6 or 7 months. Dipped back down, but then once it dipped back down, ran it up to what you might consider to be the all-time high for that time frame. Because that got us into 24. Well, I guess it's all-time highs further out. So that would get us up to 4,000. And then later on, you just kind of see how that goes. Later on, when we get all the way to 5,000 almost on that. So anyways, Ethereum's looking good. Needed to break through and then bring those back together. Bitcoin's just chilling. Just chilling. Just going sideways, accumulation, that type of thing. But yeah, the old HEX is looking good. It's looking good. I like that. I got the HEX. All right. Matthias, I know you said you were leaving. Yeah, listen, check the content. Send me a question. You have questions. I'll try to answer whatever you have. Hopefully this is useful to everybody out there. Let me know if you do have questions. Check the show notes for information. And you can go find all the links there to Actuator.Hex.com, etc. Go check it out. Check it out. And with that, we will send you out with tea. And we'll go. Oh, one last thing from T. Nestle. I was giving my take on Matthias' question. Even at the price of 3,000 greater than the 6,000, 6,000 is closer to the fair value curve. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So when we say that, what we're talking about, or at least I think what S-Load's trying to say is there's a fair value for the tokens, right? And the HTT 3000 is underpriced. And I guess you could prove it mathematically, but I guess it's also subjective. And that's why people are free to do what they want to do, right? So they can go in any direction. You don't have to listen to anyone telling you what you have to do, for sure, right? DeFi, do your own research. You get to push the buttons. But this is a fun little game, right? Because a lot of people are learning now about this, and it gives them something to do with HEX. That's HEX, right? All HEX based. Well, I like that part. Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. You're welcome, Tex Hex, and with JSOL, I'm going to give you your wish with the outro, and send that out. And with that, guys, we're going to end. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in and putting up with a little yappy dog.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart. Win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it! Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.